G'day everybody, how are you going today? It is so good to see you. I do hope that you are super well. Today we're coming from Fed Square in the heart of Melbourne, and we're going to be talking about the latest roundup of news, both stills and cinematography. We are shooting on the Z8 with the 40mm Viltrox 2.5. It's a lens coming soon from the affordable end of Viltrox's lens spectrum. It's a big month in video news because we have NAB running at Las Vegas at the moment. And of course, these days with mirrorless hybrid cameras, even so some of us might not be interested in what's going on in the video and cinema world, it affects our cameras whether we like it or not. Let's get into it. It was super exciting news to me that Nikon was acquiring Red, because what that meant for Nikon is that they were making a very deliberate and very large investment in a cinematography company. It also showed their dedication and interest in this space. It also shows that they want to get in there and muscle in there with Canon and Sony and get some of that market. Nikon has purchased Red. All of the legal side of things are done. We have the founder, Jannard, who was basically retired from Red quite a long time ago, came back to work on the mobile phone project and then kind of retired again. So he's retired. Keiji Ushi will be the CEO of Red, and he will be co-CEOing with Tommy Rios. And basically Jared Land, who was the president, not the CEO at the time of the acquisition being announced, along with Jim Jannard, they have both become advisors or special advisors to Nikon/Red. Now, this is, of course, to make those who are currently using and working and owning Red feel like the company hasn't suddenly lost parts of its DNA. Again, to me, this makes sense. Jim is retired, and so he can be involved as much or as little as he wants to. He's already a billionaire, all good. Listening to interviews, watching interviews, and reading a lot about these gentlemen and Red, these guys are deeply passionate. And I would imagine that they'll be involved for a time to come just due to their deep interest. And to be honest, why wouldn't you? What Nikon brings to Red, helicopter, what Nikon brings to Red is much deeper pockets to allow Red to have much better servicing, much larger footprint, much larger sales force, much bigger research and development. In general, this is actually a magnificent thing for Red. And Jim and Jared will both see Red grow from here. I'd love to be involved if I was in their shoes. So look, I think we will see Jared hang around longer than Jim because Jared's younger than Jim. And, well, Jim's got his billions already. Otherwise, Nikon is stating everything is business as usual. There's a press release that obviously talks about how excited everybody is, and they've all made their own individual statements.
Please pause this video if you'd like to read the statements around the finalization of the acquisition between Red and Nikon.
But again, to circle back what it means to us on the ground. Well, if you are purely a stills photographer, probably not going to make that big a difference one way or another. It's certainly not going to have a negative impact. I have actually heard a little bit of this, that Nikon's attention will be taken away from the stills side of what they do because of Red. That's not going to happen. Nikon and companies, they purchase things like this because they want to get bigger, not because they want to get distracted or they want to get smaller. It's simply not going to happen. Cameras are clearly in Nikon's DNA, and we know right now today that the Z8 and the Z9, if you want to buy the best hybrid camera that you want to take out to Africa, you want to take up a mountain, you want to take to Antarctica, or whatever you want to shoot, the Z8 and the Z9 are the best hybrids today. Canon don't have their flagship camera yet, and that's just the way it is. And Sony do, but Sony's A1 is not a Z9. They are completely different beasts. And that's okay, because Sony aims at a different market as to what Nikon aims at. And from my perspective, an A1 is far more similar to the Z8, which is what we're shooting on now. Nikon's commitment to stills photography will never waver. That is in their DNA. That's why we love them and that's why we want them. So don't worry about that. And then if you're in the hybrid space like I am and you're interested in as much cinematography growth as possible, well, this news is just so exciting because we're going to get some of the technology from Red coming into Nikon cameras. Red have this amazing global 8K sensor that already exists in their camera that's out today, the Raptor. Well, that global technology will come. It will come to Nikon because they've bought it. It's here. And it's just a matter of timing. Now, my best guess is the first global camera, and this is a guess, would be the Z9 II. And with the Z9 being 2.5 years through what will probably be its 4-year cycle, probably. Don't quote me on that, but that's pretty much what it was in the past. Then yes, there are advantages for stills photographers as well. For those who have the use case that require global, it will come at some point in time. If you're interested in more than just the hybrid space and you actually want to move up into the cinema space where you're interested in a cinema camera, well, from my perspective, I have an investment in Z glass, a lot of Z glass. Z glass is amazing and it's really affordable. Well, I would love to see a Z mount Red camera for someone like me. So the idea of being able to get a Komodo level camera with a Z mount that's just focused on cine, super excited, super useful. There's all different types of people out there and we can certainly spend time thinking about what our personal needs are. But what I love about this acquisition is that it gives Nikon the potential to increase stills photography. It gives Nikon the opportunity to make hybrid cameras even more than they were. And obviously they are now in this cinema space where they're talking to Netflix productions, they're talking to Disney, they're talking to really every production because Red cameras often end up with the action units helping to shoot the action, get in tight, get in close. It's done and it's formalized. I can't wait for what's next. Other World Computing has announced that they will be releasing Type A, CFexpress Type A Gen 4 cards. Now we're just starting to see them in CFexpress Type B as well. I think that is what 2024 is going to be all about, the rollout of Gen 4 cards. And as this article has stated, there are no Sony cameras that use Gen 4 yet, and there are no Nikon cameras that use Gen 4 CFexpress Type B. I expect that to change for everybody this year. The Ninja phone. And what it's designed to do is plug into your HDMI port on any camera with any type of HDMI and allow you to use your iPhone 15 Pro Max or 15 Pro as a screen. You can also record ProRes to it. I think the reason it's only those two phones is because only those two phones have the highest speed USB-C port, or it might be something else, perhaps something to do with the processor. Also, this device allows you to stream and use it as a monitor. There are other products in the market that are similar, like the Axoon, but Atomos have great industrial design, and I think this item looks great. It's going to come at a price of $399 US, which I feel is slightly too high for what it's offering. Plus, if you want to get the best experience, you also have to buy the case to match to go with it, which is a further $59 US. Plus, you're using the standard Sony style NP batteries, so you've got to put that on top of it as well. You're not going to come back with much change from 500, and depending on the battery, heading towards $600 US. And thus, you could buy yourself a Ninja. I suppose the main advantage is it allows you to travel lighter. It sounds like there's going to be more of an ecosystem to come with this product. I'm excited about it because it looks good and it will work. Atomos, which is here out of Melbourne, and I'll see if I can get my hands on a copy of this device. The thing about Atomos products is they're very well built, they're very robust, and they last. I've had my Ninja now for maybe 5 years, close to 6 years, somewhere in that order. I've dropped it a few times and it's going strong. It is a very well-made device. More in the cinema space, Blackmagic has released a couple of cameras. One of them is a mere 12K full-frame sensor, But the big news is the camera with the 65mm, and that's big, 17K sensor that is beyond a 35mm mount. It's only actually allowing for the Hasselblad mount or the LPL mount, which is a larger than 35mm mount as well, used by Arri. Now, this is a really interesting move from Blackmagic, which is also an Australian company. It's interesting how we've got Rode, Blackmagic, and Atomos. These are all Australian, and I think all Melbourne companies. But also what's interesting about this is, in light of the Nikon Red purchase, I think we're going to see some heating up, even more heating up in the cinema end of things. Certainly as we live in the streaming world now, where large tentpole motion pictures is starting to become a smaller part of our consumption, and streaming services is starting to become a much larger part of our consumption, and we're actually essentially paying to watch television, in inverted commas. What this is meaning is there's a lot more money for a lot more content, and it's not content that might be $200 million content, although some of it is. There is a lot more sort of mid-tier and lower tier, and when I say mid, it might be 50 million or lower $10 million productions, or even lower. And thus there's a huge need and desire for these high quality cameras that aren't as expensive as the cameras that we use for the big Hollywood blockbusters, like your Arris and your Panavisions. Now this, of course, is where Red fits in, Canon, Sony, and Blackmagic. It is over 17,000 pixels wide, so that's double 8K and a bit more, and it's 8K or 8,000 pixels tall. And Blackmagic is stating that it has 16 stops of dynamic range. All of this is very impressive. Panasonic, with the S5II and the S5IIx, has released new firmware. We have firmware 3 and firmware 2 respectively, and this firmware is making these Panasonic cameras, which I suppose sit in the market somewhere around the Canon R6II, sort of, the Sony A7 IV, the Nikon Z6II, which of course is the most senior of all of these, and we're hoping for an update soon. But this is the 24 megapixel camera that's kind of the ultimate hybrid all-rounder. Now, what I love about what Panasonic doing is they are really trying to excel in this 24 megapixel hybrid space, giving us an absolute consummate all-rounder. And now that Panasonic have finally improved their focusing system, and this update brings even further autofocus upgrades, along with updates and upgrades in their internal stabilization system. What's really interesting about these cameras is they do lean into the cinematography side of things by actually having active cooling that is fully weather sealed. And I love the design. I love how they've done this, but also these are great stills cameras. And the final thing about these cameras, which I think is amazing, is their price point. They are extraordinarily affordable, and they are almost, I think, leading the pack from a price perspective at this segment. Quickly touch on some of the features. There's camera to cloud, which allows you to send RAW files, proxy video files, JPEGs over Wi-Fi. That means it's basically ending up on someone's desk. That's pretty cool stuff. There's all of that and more in these updates, and they will be released on April 21st. New from Viltrox for Fuji and for Nikon Z mount is a new APS-C lens. It is a 56mm 1.7. Now, I have this lens in my possession, review coming very, very soon. We just have such an endless option of third-party lenses for Z. I alone am seeing a ton of these coming across my desk. And considering the price points that we're paying for these lenses, you can make a choice. You can get very affordable lenses just to get you up and running, or you can go, of course, for the first-party lenses. And there's no downside with any of this. You can either meet what your wallet can handle, or you can meet what your desires are. That's up to you. But there are just more and more options. The fact that we're seeing more options in APS-C, that's fantastic for APS-C shooters, because of course the native Z Nikon range of APS-C lenses is not that large. Well, bring on the third-party ones. There's a lot of good ones there. The new Viltrox lens is only going to be $139. It's super light, coming in at only 171 grams or 6 ounces. And it's slightly heavier for the Z mount at 187 grams. SanDISK have announced that in 2025 they will be releasing, and wait for it, a 4 terabyte SD card. My perspective on SD is it's just not as robust as CFexpress, and they haven't released any pricing yet, but I suspect it would be very expensive. We have shown now that SD is becoming more expensive per gigabyte than CFexpress Type B. I think it's exciting for people that are still using SD only. I think that's something that's starting to become a thing of the past. If you look at most mid to high-end cameras, they are either a mix of SD and CFexpress Type B. So Canon do that, Fuji do that, Nikon do that. Sony's the only company that doesn't do that. They do SD and CFexpress Type A. Type A is still better than SD. And then obviously there's manufacturers in their lower end cameras, and everybody does that, Fuji, Nikon, Sony, where they just have SD only slots. I hope moving forwards we see more of what Nikon did with the ZF, where we have an SD slot and a micro SD slot, giving you two slots, giving you redundancy without taking up hardly any space at all in your camera. 4 terabytes. Don't know how much it's going to be, and geez, that's a lot of important memories in one tiny little SD card. DJI have just announced the AVATA 2 first-person drone. They've also announced the goggles version 3 to go with that drone. These machines are ridiculous. My friend Joe just bought a pair of DJI goggles to go with his DJI drone a week or two ago, and I had my first flight on one. It's a completely different and very exciting experience compared to the way we normally fly drones, just with joysticks in our hands and that way. I absolutely love it. I look forward to bringing more of it to the channel, and this new drone, by the look of it, I haven't looked at the video spec, but it's certainly making first-person view drone flying very affordable, and DJI, they just innovate at such a fast rate. It's very exciting. And in final news for this episode, DJI have released the Ronin version 4 and the Pro version with slight tweaks on the version 3. DJI create an amazing product here, and it's interesting when we talk about the Panasonic having so much stabilization. Do you hardly need a gimbal anymore? It would be amazing to test that at some point in time. And Panasonic, if you're listening, send me an S5II so I can test this out. I'm running and gunning all the time, and that sort of camera means a lot to me. But I do think moving forwards, we are going to see more cameras with bigger and bigger IBIS units. One, as battery technology continues to improve, but also the processing power required to control that unit and make sure it's in the right place in real time. But of course, there's physical limits. If that IBIS unit can't move far enough to compensate for what you're doing, it just can't do it. So is there going to be more space in cameras around the IBIS units? And again, you could probably argue as everything else gets smaller, processors get smaller, RAM gets smaller, pipelines get smaller, there may be a little more space in our bodies to have IBIS units wriggling around a bit more. Who knows? But if you're a DJI Ronin person, there are new ones out. All right, everybody. I'd love to know, of all of those things, what's exciting to you? The firmware updates for the Panasonic? Maybe the crazy cameras from Blackmagic? Is it the fact that the Red acquisition has been finalized, or is it the Atomos Ninja phone? Let me know in the comments below. It's been so good to see you. If this is your first time here, I would love to see you again. So please subscribe, please share, and please like. All right, bye for now.